The station smelled like burnt oil and rotting food. Connor Hale had been on a lot of bad stations in his life, but Kethvoral was near the top of the list. It sat at the edge of contested space like a broken tooth, ugly, useful, and full of things that did not belong anywhere else. Connor was 34 years old. He had a wide jaw, short brown hair going gray at the sides, and the kind of eyes that had stopped being surprised by things a long time ago. He wore a worn jacket with a faded U.S. Navy emblem on the left shoulder. He had not served in 7 years, but he still wore it. Old habits that he walked through the bazaar with his co-pilot, Lena Carr, half a step behind him. Lena was 29, lean and sharp-faced, with dark hair tied back and a habit of noticing trouble before Connor did. She was currently noticing several things at once, all of them bad. "We need the coolant packs and the relay coil," she said, keeping her voice low. "Nothing else. We do not stop, we do not look at anything, and we do not talk to anyone we do not have to." "I know," Connor said. "I am saying it again because the last time we were on a station like this, you gave half our food stores to a 6-legged creature that turned out to be a con artist. It looked hungry. It looked hungry on purpose." Lena sidestepped a stack of crates that smelled like something had died inside them. "Eyes forward, Connor." He kept his eyes forward. The bazaar was loud and packed, a long corridor of stalls and cages and shouting. There were species here that Connor had names for and species he did not. Traders, mercenaries, scavengers, and worse. The lights were too bright in some places and completely dark in others. The floor was sticky in a way he chose not to think about. He passed the slave row without slowing down. He had seen it before on stations like this. A long line of iron posts, each one with a chain, each chain attached to a living creature. It was legal here. It was normal here. It made his stomach feel like a closed fist, but it was not his fight and he knew it, and so he kept walking. He was 10 steps past it when he heard the voice. "Can you buy me and take me as your slave? Please. I am begging you." Connor stopped. The voice was small and tired. It was also speaking English. Clean English, with only a slight bend to certain vowels, as if the speaker had learned it carefully from recordings rather than from living with it. He turned his head slowly. She was chained to the last post in the row. Young, or at least she looked young by the standards he could apply to her species, which he did not recognize. She was slight, with pale grayish skin and large amber eyes that caught the overhead light and held it. Her wrists were raw where the cuffs had been. Her clothes were rough and dirty. She was looking directly at him with an expression that was not hope exactly, it was something more careful than hope. It was calculation wearing Hope's face. She said it again, quieter. "Please. Buy me. I will serve you forever. Just take me away from here." Lena grabbed Connor's arm. "Keep walking." Connor did not move. He was looking at the alien girl's wrists. He was looking at the post she was chained to, which was the same kind of post you would use to chain a dog outside a shop. He was looking at her eyes, which were still on him and only him, as if she had already decided he was the one. "Connor." Lena's voice was low and careful. "I know what you are thinking. Do not think it." "She's speaking English," he said. "A lot of beings out here learn English." "It does not mean," she asked me specifically. He turned to look at Lena. She looked at me and asked me. "Not the guy 3 stalls over. Not the group of traders who passed before us. Me." Lena looked at the alien girl. The alien girl looked back at Lena with those large amber eyes, saying nothing now, just waiting. Lena let out a slow breath through her nose. "We do not have the credits for this," she said. "We might." Connor, he had already turned back to the alien girl. He crouched down slightly so they were closer to the same level. She did not flinch away from him. She watched him the way a person watches something they have been waiting a long time for. "Why me?" he asked. "Just that." Simple and direct, the alien girl looked at his jacket. At the faded emblem on the shoulder. Then she looked back up at his face, and for just a moment, the careful calculation in her eyes broke open into something more real, something tired and bruised and full of a very specific kind of desperate hope. She did not answer him right away. She pressed her raw wrists together in her lap and looked at the emblem one more time, as if making sure she had it right. Then she said, very quietly, "Because I have heard what your people do." Her name was Sale. Connor learned this standing beside the last post in the slave row on Kethvoral Station, while Lena stood a few feet back with her arms crossed and her eyes moving between him and the rest of the bazaar the way they always did when she thought something was about to go wrong. Sale told him her name in a flat, steady voice, as if she had already moved past the part where names mattered and was focused entirely on the next step. She was Very, a species Connor had never heard of. When he said so, she nodded as if this did not surprise her. "Most humans in the outer lanes have not heard of us," she said. "That is partly why we are valuable here." "Valuable how?" Connor asked. She tapped the side of her head with one chained hand. "We remember everything. Every word we hear. Every document we read. Every conversation we are present for. We do not lose it. It stays, exactly as it happened." She said this without pride. She said it the way you describe a wound that has not healed, matter of fact, and a little tired. "That sounds useful," Lena said from behind Connor, not moving closer. "It is why we are kept," Sale said simply. Connor asked where she had learned English. She told him, a human smuggler, 3 years ago, who had kept her for about a year before he was killed in a docking dispute on a station 2 sectors over. He had treated her well, she said. He had talked to her like she was a person. She had kept every word he ever said to her, saved perfectly in the part of her mind that never let anything go. After him, she had passed through 3 more owners. She named none of them. Connor did not ask. "And why me specifically?" Connor said. It was not really a question anymore. He already had part of the answer. She looked at his jacket again. "The faded emblem. The Very have a word for your kind. The ones from that civilization, the American ones, the broader human ones. The word means, approximately, the stubborn ones who do not kneel." She paused. "I have been in this row for 11 days. Many people have walked past me. I asked no one else." Lena made a small sound that might have been a laugh in other circumstances. Connor straightened up and looked at the stall. The slaver operating this section of the row was a creature named Durak, broad, 4-armed, with pale wet eyes and a translator unit clipped to the fold of skin at its neck. It was watching Connor with the mild professional interest of someone who expected a transaction. Connor asked the price. Durak named a number. It was, as Lena immediately calculated under her breath, nearly everything Connor had in liquid credits. Not quite everything. Close enough to make his jaw tight that he tried to haggle. He was bad at it. He offered a number that was too low and said it in a tone that was too honest, and Durak dismissed it with a wave of one of its 4 hands before he finished the sentence. Lena stepped forward. What followed was 11 minutes of the most focused and unpleasant negotiation Connor had ever witnessed. Lena did not raise her voice. She did not threaten. She simply knew things: the going rate for Very in 3 different markets, the current legal status of unregistered sales on Kethvoral, the name of the station's trade arbitration office and its hours of operation, and she laid each piece of information down like a card on a table, one at a time, until Durak had gone quiet and still and was looking at her with something close to respect. She cut the price by nearly half. Connor paid it. He stood there while the transaction processed and felt sick in a way he could not quite name, not at Lena, not at himself exactly, but at the whole shape of the situation. That this was a thing that could be bought and sold. That he was now, technically, part of that system. Durak handed over a chain controller and a data chip with what it called ownership paperwork. Connor took both and said nothing. They walked Sale out of the slave row and into a quieter side corridor, away from the noise and the stalls. When they were far enough that no one was watching closely, Connor stopped that he crouched down to her level again. She was watching him with those careful amber eyes. "I am not your owner," he said. "I am the guy who got you out of there. You are free. Do you understand that?" Sale looked at him for a long moment. She did not look relieved. She did not look grateful in the way he expected. She looked like someone doing a very fast and very thorough calculation. I understand the words, she said carefully. But on Keth Vorel, a Vary without a registered owner is classified as a stray asset. A stray asset can be legally seized by any licensed trader within station limits. She folded her raw hands together. The seizure period begins 72 hours after the previous ownership record closes. Your transaction was logged 4 minutes ago. She met his eyes. I have checked the station legal code 3 times since I was brought here. You are not just my best option, Connor Hale. You are my only one. Lena looked at Connor over the top of Sale's head. Her expression said, I told you we did not have the credits for this. Connor stood up slowly. He looked at the data chip in his hand. He looked at Sale, who was still watching him, still waiting, still doing that quiet and careful calculation behind her eyes that he put the data chip in his jacket pocket. Can you walk? He asked. Yes, she said. Then walk with us. We are going back to the ship. The Dusty Meridian was not a pretty ship. It was a mid-range cargo runner, broad across the middle and narrow at the nose, with hull plates that had been replaced so many times in so many different places that the whole thing looked like a patchwork quilt from the outside. Connor had owned it for 6 years. He knew every sound it made and what each sound meant. Sale stepped aboard and stopped just inside the airlock. She stood very still and looked at the corridor in front of her, the low ceiling, the hanging cables, the smell of engine grease and Calvin's cooking coming from somewhere deeper in the ship. She did not move for almost 10 seconds. It is small, she said. It flies, Connor said. She nodded once and stepped fully inside. Calvin Arros was in the galley when they arrived. He was 45 years old, originally from a small town in Georgia, and he had been on the Dusty Meridian longer than Lena. He was a big man, quiet by nature, missing 2 fingers on his right hand from a docking accident he never talked about. He communicated mostly through food. If he liked you, he fed you. If he did not know you yet, he fed you and watched to see how you ate. That he saw Sale, looked at Connor, looked back at Sale, and said nothing. He turned back to the stove, added something to the pot, and a few minutes later set a bowl on the small table near the door. He put a spoon beside it and stepped back. Sale looked at the bowl. She looked at Calvin. He was already turned away, stirring something else. She sat down and ate. She ate slowly and carefully, like someone who had learned not to trust that the bowl would stay full. Connor watched her for just a moment before looking away. That he gave her the smallest cabin, which was not very small because none of the cabins on the Dusty Meridian were generous. It had a bunk, a shelf, a light, and a wall hook. That was everything. He showed her how the light switch worked and left her to it. That he was halfway down the corridor when he heard her voice behind him. Thank you, she said. That he turned. She was standing in the doorway of the cabin, one hand on the frame, looking at him in that steady way of hers. You do not have to thank me, he said. I know, she said. I am doing it anyway. He did not know what to say to that, so he nodded and kept walking. She did not sleep that first night, as far as anyone could tell. When Lena got up at the early shift and passed the cabin, the light was on. When Calvin checked a few hours later, Sale was sitting cross-legged on the bunk with her eyes open, very still. By the time Connor was up and in the cockpit reviewing the route, Sale was already there. She was sitting in the co-pilot's seat, Lena's seat, which she had vacated the moment Lena appeared, moving to a back panel without being asked. She had reorganized the navigation charts while Lena slept. Not just organized, corrected. She had found 3 errors in the plotted route that would have added a full day of travel time. She pointed them out quietly, with no ceremony, as if she was simply noting that a shoelace was untied. Lena stared at the corrected charts for a moment. How long did this take you? About an hour, Sale said. The 3rd error was not easy to find. The chart data was inconsistent going back several entries. Lena said nothing. She sat down, checked the corrections herself, confirmed they were right, and updated the route. She did not say thank you. But she also did not tell Sale to stay out of the cockpit. The next day, Sale found Calvin in the engine room and told him there was a microfracture in the secondary coolant line at the junction near the port thruster. Calvin stared at her and then went and looked. The fracture was there. Small, he would have caught it in another week or two. Maybe. That evening he made extra food and left a larger portion in front of her without comment. Connor watched all of this from a careful distance. That evening, when Sale was helping Calvin with something in the engine room, Connor told her plainly to stop working so hard. She came and found him afterward. She stood in the doorway of the cockpit, and she asked him what she was supposed to do instead. Rest, he said. Read something. Do whatever you want. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, very honestly, I do not know what I want. I have not been asked that in a long time. Connor had no good answer to that. He told her she had time to figure it out. She nodded and went back down the corridor, and he sat in the cockpit for a while thinking about what it must be like to have that sentence be true. They stopped at a refueling post 2 days out from Kethvorl, a small Keth-operated station, barely more than a fuel dock with an office attached. Connor went in to file the transit papers. Sale came with him. He did not ask her to, she simply came, and he did not stop her. The station official was a thin, unfriendly creature who looked at the paperwork, looked at Sale, and looked at Connor with a long flat stare. Carrying an unregistered Vary, the official said. She is registered, Connor said. He put the data chip on the counter. Check it. The official checked it. Its expression did not change. Humans, it said, the word shaped like a mild insult. Always think you can just walk through any door and rewrite the rules of the room. Connor looked at it calmly. I am not rewriting anything. I bought her legal on Kethvorl, she is documented, and she is crew on my ship. Is there a problem with the paperwork? There was not. The official stamped the transit form and slid it back across the counter. Connor picked it up, thanked no one, and walked out. Sale walked beside him back to the ship. She did not speak until they were up the ramp and the airlock was sealed. Then she stopped and turned to look at him. You did not apologize to it, she said. Why would I? Connor said, already moving toward the cockpit. She stood there a moment longer, looking at the space where he had been. She filed the moment away in that part of her mind that never let anything go. She was beginning to understand that this was going to be a full file. The bounty ping arrived on the 4th day. Connor was in the cockpit when the notification came through, a small yellow flag on the comm panel, the kind that showed up when a registered asset query had matched something on the ship's registry. He almost dismissed it. Then he opened it and read the description, and his hand went still on the panel. Very female, amber eyes, pale gray skin, approximately young adult by Vary standards. Last registered owner, Durak Trading Post, Kethvorl. Reward for safe return. Contact through Syndicate Channel 7. He read it twice. Then he called Sale to the cockpit. She came in and read the message from the co-pilot seat without touching anything. She read it once and then sat very still, both hands flat on her knees, looking at the panel with an expression that Connor had not seen on her face before. It was not fear exactly. It was closer to the look of someone who had been expecting a knock on the door for a long time and had just heard it. Sale, Connor said. Is there something you have not told me? She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, yes. Now would be a good time. She took a slow breath. Before Durak, I was in the private household of a man named Velas. He is a broker, a high-level operator for what they call the Galactic Syndicate. A large and old criminal organization with interests in about a dozen species territories. She paused. I was kept as a memory keeper. When Velas had meetings, I was present. It was considered safe because I was a slave. No one pays attention to the slave in the room. Connor waited. 8 months ago, she continued, Velas hosted a meeting I was not supposed to hear. It ran long. They forgot I was in the adjacent room with the door not fully closed. She looked at Connor directly. The meeting was between Velas, 2 Syndicate commanders, and representatives from 3 Outer Rim species councils. They were planning a series of false flag operations. Staged attacks on human shipping lanes, made to look like they were carried out by a fourth species, one with historical tensions with your people. The cockpit was very quiet. The goal, Sale said, was to pull humanity into a war it did not start, against an enemy it did not actually have, so that the territorial vacuum created by the conflict could be filled by Syndicate-backed interests. She folded her hands. I heard it all. Every name, every timeline, every location, every number. I remember all of it exactly. Connor leaned back in his seat. He looked at the ceiling of the cockpit for a moment. Then he looked back at her. And then you ran. I tried to. They caught me. I was moved between locations 4 times before I ended up on Kethvoril. Durak was supposed to hold me quietly until the Lost sent someone to collect me personally. He sold me early because he needed the credits. She paused. He did not know who I was or what I was carrying. He only knew I was very and therefore valuable. But Velas knows you are gone, Connor said. Yes. And now he knows where you are. The bounty is under a false name, she said, but yes. That message is from his people. Connor was quiet for a moment. Then he asked one question, flat and direct, can you repeat it all? Everything you heard in that room? She tapped the side of her head. Word for word. I cannot forget it. I have tried. Lena appeared in the cockpit doorway. She had been listening from the corridor. She came in, sat down at the NAV panel, and pulled up the ship's sensor display without saying anything. After a moment she said, quietly, we have 2 contacts. They dropped out of FTL about 40 minutes behind us. They are holding distance but matching speed. Syndicate? Connor asked. The signatures are masked, Lena said. But yes. Calvin appeared behind her in the doorway, wiping his hands on a cloth. He looked at the sensor display. He looked at Connor. He said nothing. Options, Connor said. Lena ran the numbers fast. We cannot outrun them. Not with the engine in its current state. They will be on us in about 6 hours if they push. I can buy 4 more, Calvin said from the doorway. Maybe 5. If you let me do something inadvisable to the coupling on the port drive. Do it, Connor said. Calvin nodded and left. His footsteps receded quickly down the corridor toward the engine room. Connor looked at the sensor display. 2 ships, holding back, patient. They were not rushing. They did not need to rush. They thought they had all the time there was. He thought about Sale's words. A war that humanity did not start. Shipping lanes. False flags. He thought about the kind of people who plan things like that and thought they could plan them quietly forever. He turned to the comm panel. What are you doing? Lena asked. There is a human long-haul freighter about 3 hours from here, Connor said, already typing. Independent operator. I saw the registry ping when we came through the last waypoint. He pulled up the contact and started composing a Type B message. I am going to tell her everything Sale just told me. Short version. And I am going to ask her to relay it up whatever chain she has access to. Lena stared at him. You do not know this person. No, Connor agreed. And you think she will just relay a message from a stranger about a galactic syndicate conspiracy? Connor hit send. He turned in his seat to look at Lena. I think she is human, he said simply. And I think this is the kind of thing humans relay. Lena looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned back to the NAV panel. 4 hours, she said. Calvin had better mean it about the coupling. The message went out into the dark. Behind them, the 2 Syndicate ships kept their distance and waited. And in the small cockpit of the dusty Meridian, Sale sat very still and watched Connor Hale with those large amber eyes, filing away everything she was seeing. The 2 Syndicate ships moved in at hour 5. They did not attack. They came up on either side of the dusty Meridian and matched speed, close enough that the proximity alarms went quiet because they were too close for the sensors to keep cycling. Then the comm panel lit up with a hail request, formal, polished, the kind of hail that was designed to sound official. Connor let it sit for 4 seconds before answering. He wanted them to feel those 4 seconds. The face that appeared on the screen was a humanoid species he did not recognize, sharp-featured, wearing a dark uniform with no markings. Its voice came through the translator flat and careful. "You are carrying a very female," it said. "She is registered property of a Syndicate-affiliated holding company. We are here to retrieve her. Please prepare to be boarded." Connor leaned forward in his seat. "I am not carrying any property," he said. "I am carrying crew. She is documented as crew on a registered independent vessel. You can check the transit papers." "The transit papers are fraudulent," the figure said. "That is a serious accusation," Connor said. "You will want to make it officially, then. Through proper channels. With documentation." He kept his voice very calm. "I should also tell you that this conversation is being recorded and transmitted in real time." A short silence. "Transmitted where?" the figure asked. "Wherever it reaches," Connor said. "Open channel. Anyone listening in this sector gets it." He let that sit for a moment. "So if you are going to board a registered independent vessel in open space and forcibly remove a crew member, you are welcome to do that. But you will be doing it in front of an audience." Another silence, longer this time. Lena was watching the sensor display. She spoke quietly without turning her head. "They are not moving." Connor kept his eyes on the screen. The figure in the dark uniform had gone very still. It was the stillness of someone running calculations, weighing options, deciding what the cost of the next move actually was. Then Lena said, even more quietly, 3 new contacts. Coming in from the far side. Connor glanced at the sensor display. 3 ships, dropping out of FTL in a loose spread. He looked at their registry signatures. A diplomatic courier, marked with the Human Observer Corps. A patrol cutter out of a human border post, small and fast. And a 3rd ship, a battered long-haul freighter with a registry that matched the one Connor had messaged 18 hours ago. Petra Hollis had come herself. Connor felt something loosen in his chest that had been tight since the bounty ping arrived. None of the 3 ships powered weapons. None of them hailed the Syndicate vessels. They simply held position on the far side of the dusty meridian, visible on every sensor in the area, and waited. 3 witnesses. On record. In open space, the figure on the screen looked at something off-camera. It looked back at Connor. Something in its expression had shifted, not angry, not afraid. Just finished. The look of someone closing a door on a room they had decided not to enter. "This is not over," it said. "I know," Connor said. "But today it is." The 2 Syndicate ships pulled back. They turned away from the dusty meridian and within 3 minutes were gone, back into FTL and out of sensor range. The proximity alarms cycled back on and immediately went quiet because there was nothing close enough to flag. Lena let out a long, slow breath. Calvin said something from the engine room that Connor did not quite catch but understood the general meaning of. On the sensor display, Petra's freighter blinked a single-pulse signal, the old spacer code for understood and standing by. Connor blinked one back. Sale delivered her testimony to the diplomatic courier's legal recorder over the next 4 hours. She sat in the small meeting room on the courier ship, across a table from a quiet human official named Doris Kwan, and she spoke without stopping and without notes. Names. Dates. Locations. The exact words of each person in that room. Every detail of the plan to burn false flags across human shipping lanes and pull a civilization into a war it did not know was being built for it. She did not miss a word. Doris Kwan sat very still through most of it and took notes with a hand that Connor noticed was not entirely steady by the end. The testimony went into the diplomatic record. From there it moved fast, the way things move when they are true and specific and supported by a source that can repeat itself exactly under any questioning. The 3 Outer Rim councils involved received copies within 48 hours. 2 of them quietly withdrew from all Syndicate agreements within the week. The 3rd did it publicly, in a formal statement, and named Velas by name. Velas disappeared from public record shortly after. Nobody in any of the relevant circles was surprised. The false flag operations never happened. On the evening after the testimony, Connor found the data chip from Durac's transaction in his jacket pocket. He walked to the ship's recycler in the small corridor near the galley. He fed the chip into it. He stood there for a moment listening to it process. He went and found Sail in the engine room, where she had been helping Calvin with something that did not need helping with, but which Calvin had apparently decided needed helping with anyway. Connor handed her a folded piece of paper. She opened it. It was a crew contract, 1 page, simple language, the same standard terms he gave Lena and Calvin. Her name was filled in at the top in his handwriting. She looked at it for a long time. Long enough that Calvin drifted quietly toward the door and disappeared. Then she looked up at Connor. "Why did you stop?" she asked. "In that market. You were walking. I saw it in your face, you had already decided not to look. And then you stopped." Connor thought about it. He thought about it honestly, which was the only way he knew how to think about things. "You asked in English," he said. "And the way you asked it, buy me, own me, take me, I heard what you were actually saying underneath it. You were not asking to be owned. You were asking to be seen." He paused. "I do not know. Maybe I stopped because I was the one you asked. And you asked me for a reason." Sail was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "The very have a word for it. For when a person says one thing and means something much larger underneath it. When the words are a door and the real meaning is the room behind it." She looked at the contract in her hands. "We use it when someone is out of choices but still has enough trust left to reach toward a stranger." "What is the word?" Connor asked. She said it. Soft and short, 2 syllables in a language he did not speak. It did not translate. He could hear that it did not translate, that it was one of those words that belonged entirely to the people who had needed to invent it. That he nodded anyway. Sail picked up the pen from the small shelf beside the engine panel. She signed the contract on the line at the bottom. She signed it carefully, the way a person signs something they intend to mean. Connor took it back, folded it, and put it in his pocket next to where the data chip used to be. "Welcome to the crew," he said. She did not say thank you this time. She just nodded once, the way crew does, and turned back to help Calvin with whatever he had decided needed doing.